This week on the Home Series, with a tough economic climate and relatively low incomes in Ghana, buying or building a new home can be costly for many. You may be left with a number of choices. Do you save small to buy or build the home? And even with this, you may wonder whether you should be buying the materials with the money you save, as in buy the blocks and sand bit by bit, or save till you get a lump sum of money before you start the projects. Do you go for a short-term loan to buy or build? What about mortgage? How well do you understand mortgage financing? Join me, Mama Viowusu Abuaji, and my guests, Frank Kwache, Chief Executive Officer of Daffin Finance, and Charles Agyemang Bonsu, a General Manager and Mortgage Specialist with the Republic Bank, as we explore the subject of mortgage financing.
Thank you, gentlemen. Owning a home is at the heart of almost every Ghanaian, and people save a lot of money to be able to achieve it. But a lot of people also don't get there. Mr. Frank Kwache, I want you to explain why.
Yeah, because, I mean, the cost is, or the cost of owning a house is not something like a walk in the park. It's a huge capital outlay there. And maybe the housing, I mean, in recent times, the least I've heard is like houses or an apartment in airport's residential area, which I've seen in the ads, is like $69,000 minimum, and some could go as high as 500,000 United States dollars. I mean, we are not talking about pocket change. We are talking about a huge amount of money. So some get started somewhere along the line, like, oh, I can afford it. And then in the end, they realize that circumstances have changed. They might not be able to get to where they want to do. So I think it has to do with the costs of the property that they want to buy. That is what really comes to play in there. And of course, the location of the property is also something that comes to play with the pricing. Because a house in, not to demean any place, but a house in my father's village.
That's where I live.
Yes, a house in my father's village somewhere in Achiansi or Oda would not be the same price as a house in, let's say, on the Spintex Road. The locations are different and the pricing will be different. That is where I think the issues do come in.
Okay, before I move away from you, but should that be so?
Of course, yes, because everybody wants to live in a prime location. Why? Because of maybe the amenities in the area, the road network in the area, how easily accessible that place is. It all comes to play. I mean, in cities that I have lived, those who live in downtown core pay more compared to those who live in the suburbs or the outskirts. Because when you live in the outskirts or the suburb, you may commute. So there's a transportation cost to get into the city every now and then. But if I'm living in downtown core, I might not need even a vehicle. I can just walk to my workplace. So it all comes to play in the costs of the property, where it is located, and the amenities or the accessories that comes with it determines the price.
Let me engage you, Mr. Charles Agyemang Bonsu. With your experience, what are people looking out for, or what do they come for the most?
Well, I think, as my colleague said, owning a home is really the biggest investment you can ever make in your lifetime. But most of the time, we start from wrong presumptions. The thing is, the person just wants a decent place to live in. You take a person who is single, finish school, finish college, work for 2 years, 3 years, has been renting, ready to start life. He just needs a decent place to live, not necessarily going to live in airport, but as you said, Kuntunsi. Kuntunsi is a decent place to live. And the prices of houses in Kuntunsi are far less than those in airport. And those are very affordable. So you look at your pocket and make a decision as to the type of house you want to live in. Once you work, once you earn a living, you make a salary, you should be able to use that salary to budget for a house.
So can every person who earns any kind of salary pay for a house?
I believe so. But let me say, it's not everybody who will need a mortgage. Some people don't need a mortgage. I mean, for the multi-rich people, they don't need a mortgage. If the house is $200,000, they can pay for it. But beyond that high-class people, everybody should aspire to have a mortgage.
Okay, that's a dream. But in reality, if I earn 1,000, 2,000 Ghana cedis, can I go for a mortgage?
Of course. We have teachers, nurses, people in the public sector who earn far less than that, who own properties in Kuntunsi and Kaswa.
And paying how?
They make, you use about, we say that affordability is a situation where you must not spend not more than 30% of your income on housing expenses. So you always have to look at 30% of your income, either in rent or in paying a mortgage. If you can find a property that you can use at least 30% of your income to pay for a mortgage, then you qualify for that.
Okay, so with your experience, has that happened? Have you seen people who
It has happened so many times. So many times, and in Kuntunsi in particular.
Okay, it looks like I bought Kuntunsi and it's on me.
No, not on you, because we have a lot. I mean, I've been involved the past 5 years in estates in Kuntunsi, where all of them, about 200 houses, are public sector employees.
Okay. I think I have a good idea.
Good.
So it is possible.
It is possible, and it's happening.
Okay. Mr. Frankwache, this sounds a bit, maybe because I have not engaged so many people in the public sector, but I know that you're a private sector person, and there are a lot of people who are doing private businesses who earn salaries but are unable to afford a mortgage. What are they doing wrong? Is it just a perception?
It's like my colleague pointed out. It all comes down to what you want as an individual, because your salary should determine what kind of property you should be realistic to afford.
So I earn 2,500, but I've got a family as well. I am tired of renting because it costs more to rent. Can I, today in Ghana?
Yes, depends on the location. I mean, for instance, if you earn 2,500, with all intent and purposes, you cannot maybe say that you want to live in Jowulu or you want to live in airport residential area. It's unimaginable.
Because you simply can't afford.
Because you simply can't afford. But maybe outskirts of Accra. Let me just give an example. Oyarifa, Oyibi, those areas, it comes readily. It will cost you more to commute every morning into the city, but you can afford to own a property in those areas. And it should not be like fanciful. It's like, it depends on your lifestyle. And I always say, if you want a house with a swimming pool in there, with all kinds of gadgets, it's going to cost you a lot. But just a simple, decent place where you go home, you feel like you are home, you can sleep, you can have your peace, you can have your security. It's something that I think that it should be affordable. Why do I say that? You can't, I have this philosophy that you can't for all your life be paying rent. It just doesn't add up. You are rather helping somebody else, own a property, or somebody else live off you. But if you sit down and look at the math involved, maybe you can start from somewhere. And it does not always have to be like, I have bought the house outright. I know in recent times, people are giving out lands. And I have people within my friendship then, that they bought the land, they paid for it. That's the first phase of it. The next phase was like, they started you break it into phases. They started, they got some loans, they got some monies from their, employers. Some employers that I know do give people rent, which comes in annually. So people of those categories, every year when they get their rent money, together with their savings, they push the project a little. And one classical person that I know, it took him 5 years. But within 5 years, he's been able to build and he's living in the place now. He's not finished it outright like he would want it. There are a few things that needs to be done, but it's habitable. He lives in it. He doesn't pay any rent to anybody. So it depends on how you break it up and how you want to get there. And as the saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles might have to begin with maybe a step.
But do you have to pay with an arm and a leg, the repayments, with the huge interests?
Good. That's a good question. What is the alternative? The alternative is that you will be paying rent. Good. What is the difference? The difference is that that amount of money you are paying for your mortgage, which is part principal, part interest. What many people don't know is that that interest is tax deductible. That interest you are paying is tax deductible.
Please explain.
Okay. For the sake of, let's say, to make it quite simple, assuming you are making 2,000 a month, and let's say your tax is 10%. That 10%.
So that's like what, 200?
200. Let's say 200. And let's say the interest you've been paying is 5 cedis. That's for the sake of 5 cedis.
Sure.
That means your tax that you pay to government is 20 minus 5.
Is it?
Yes. So there's a tax benefit that people are not aware. So from day one, you own the property, you can take possession. Let me take, just like my colleague said, 5 years, the one who took 5 years. Day one, when I take a mortgage, day one, I take possession of that property. I haven't paid fully for it, but I take possession. I own it. I make monthly payments for a certain number of years. 2, as I said, the interest is deductible. 3, that in 5 years' time, I have appreciation of the property. If I bought the property for 100 cedis, in 5 years' time, it's 20%.
And it doesn't matter where?
It doesn't matter. Just that some places the appreciation is very high. In others, the rate of appreciation is low. But there's always appreciation. 99% of the time, there's appreciation. Unless you decide you want to build, as I said, in his village, where there's no economic value to these things. But 99% of the time, there's appreciation. So in 5 years' time, when he has finished building, I can decide to sell that property and go for a bigger one because maybe my family has increased. So there are certain advantages that you gain from going for a mortgage. Let me say, mortgage is simply a housing loan.
So how come the repayment takes such a long time?
Because
you're paying 30 years. Why?
Okay. Let's say the house is 100,000 cedis, which you can get anyway in cash for 100,000 cedis, a 2-bedroom. You cannot afford the 100,000 cedis today. So I say you make monthly payments for the next 20, 30 years.
But you end up paying like 10 times, if not more, what you've taken.
And I'm saying that interest that you are paying is tax deductible. So it's not an issue.
That's the one that I'm thinking how it works. Mr. Frank, you've been smiling.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Okay.
I have a mortgage.
We don't know this.
I have a mortgage.
See, when he's talking about the tax deductible, the reason why I'm smiling is that in this country, maybe in recent times that maybe government is trying to get people to, how many people file their taxes?
Well, but it's
not so many people even think about filing their taxes.
Unless they have political ambitions.
That's the whole thing.
It's not true.
And the other thing also is that the tax deductible that we are talking about here, in most cases, people don't get to understand how that translates into maybe pocket dollars for them. That's how I'm seeing it. Because only a few people might get the tax man here giving you maybe a refund. But in most cases, it's a tax credit that they might give you. That next year, for instance, if you're going to be paying more taxes, they're giving you a credit so that it reduces your taxes. But where you're a salaried worker and it's as pay as you earn, then it's like it becomes a little bit of a difficulty to appreciate this. But where you are a businessman and then you know that you have to file your taxes separately, you can then factor in this element of this tax deductible interest that you have paid. Now, back to your question of 30 years. You don't necessarily have to do it over 30 years. In some jurisdictions, I know that you can pay off your mortgage.
At some point?
At some point in time.
Okay.
And like he rightly pointed out, you might start right from school or from college. 5 years, 10 years down the line, you might have gone up through the corporate ladder. You are a big person, you are earning much more now. You should be able to maybe walk to your bankers and tell them that, listen, the money that probably maybe I took, I will want to pay it off. But people don't go back to have that discussion, and it's like it's something which is hanging on them and they are paying. I always advise people that when you are going for a loan, the loan has a cost. Sit down and find out alternatives about this cost. Maybe Bank A might be offering you at maybe 15%. Bank B might be offering you maybe at 25%. People need to shop around to find this costing. Just like when you want to buy a shirt or you want to buy a car or whatever, you go around looking. So people should do a little bit of what I call personal research. We are in an environment here where people don't want to do the little hard work, which pays off, but they want you that, oh, do you know somebody who can give me this? Do you know somebody? Without finding out other, things that come with it. Because I think that it's a big outlay. It's something that is an investment. In other jurisdictions, people's pension are in their property because after some time, they will downsize. What I mean downsizing is if I'm living in a 5-bedroom house, all my children are out of the house, they're gone. I don't need a 5-bedroom house. Sure. I must be able to sell the 5-bedroom house and go and get a 2-bedroom house somewhere and live. In that case, the 5-bedroom house, how much I'm going to sell it for, given that there's been some appreciation over time, and how much I'm going to buy a 2-bedroom now, the difference should be something that I should be able to live on as my retirement income and maybe invest it somewhere else to also be generating some periodic income. But we see, when it comes to money in this country, people don't want to talk about it because we think that everybody thinks that it's my money and I know how to deal with my money. But of course, people have learned, or people are experts about it. Of course, there are also, the other side of it where scammers are around taking advantage of people. That is also there. But I believe that credibly, there are people around who can help you make financial decisions.
Yeah. So what's the rate on the market, the current rates, the range?
Well, for us at Republic Bank, I started talking about the public sector employees. We have a rate of 15%. The maximum we go is 15%, between 10 to 15% for public sector workers.
Okay.
Now, to any other person, we can anywhere from 20 to 24%.
Why is that?
Why is that?
How is any other person different from the public sector worker?
Public sector.
We all in fact, we actually even pay them. All of us, we pay them.
But we all agree that.
But when it comes to mortgage, they get a better deal than us.
Okay, we all agree that the remuneration in the public sector is not good. Okay, so this is a deal we've been working with the Ghana government for a while, which, we've been doing for public sector
But this is
employees.
Exclusive to you.
It's exclusive to us as a bank, but I think later this year, a lot of other banks, 5 other banks will be involved.
Okay.
Okay. But beyond that, I mean, the majority of the mortgages that are out there are not the public sector. They're just
For
ordinary
everybody
people. And
Okay.
that's the rate that we have at the moment.
Okay.
But you see, the rate is a function of the economy. I mean, interest rates in the economy generally are high.
But we've heard how the Bank of Ghana's rate is lower, but if you go to the rest of the banks, nobody's.
No, their policy rate is 17%. Interbank now is averagely, I think, about 16 thereabouts now. And you see, like you rightly pointed out, interest rates generally in this country are high. There are a lot of factors that have made this rate so high. And for me, one of the things that I always say is that we have a tendency of having inflation spike up in this country, and inflation is one of the main factors that drive our interest rate. I would love to see a situation in this country where rates could be as low as under 10. I would love a situation like that. But the question we ask is that, what are the factors that are going to drive this rate to under 10? Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But it's not going to maybe happen immediately. Currently, I think efforts and steps are being made to drive the rates lower. But other things like production and other things will all have to kick in so that inflation doesn't rear its head again. Currently, inflation went as low as 9.6. It's now moved back to 10%. Now, nobody knows whether it's going to go up or it's going to go down again. So it's a myriad of things. But in this environment where we cannot guarantee interest rate, I would prefer to see a more innovative product in the banking sector where rates are adjustable on mortgages. I'm using the Canadian environment. In the Canadian environment, you hear a 2-year mortgage, a 3-year mortgage, a 5-year mortgage. What it simply means is that the mortgage might be a 25-year mortgage, but it means that every 5 years, the rates are reset. It's a win-win situation.
So does it go up or down?
It depends on the rates. If the rates are up, currently rates are are moving gradually up in Canada, so the rates are going up.
Okay.
But about 2 years ago, rates were all going down. So people were even not doing fixed mortgages again. They were doing variable mortgages because the rates have started going down. But now that rates have started climbing up gradually, people are back into doing fixed mortgages. So every 5 years or every 3 years, depending, rates are reset. So people don't get to be bogged down 15 years, 20 years with a fixed mortgage of, like he's saying, 20%, 25%, I think that it's going to be too much for the person to be paying that kind of mortgage, because you end up, if by the end of the 30 years, you might have end up maybe paying about 5 times the value of the property that you bought. Give and take, inflation or value of property might have also gone up. But come to think of it, it's a huge capital cost or a huge chunk of your money that had gone into just maybe owning just the property.
What I want to ask is, I'll come to you. Why do people end up losing their homes?
Oh. Okay. Now, when you take a mortgage, you are supposed to be paying every month a certain amount for the number of years that you have signed up. Or when you make any additional money, you can pay down the loan or pay off the loan. If you refuse or you are not able to pay, to make the monthly payment for a certain number of months, then
typically how many months?
Well, after 90 days, if you do not pay consequently for 90 days,
that's 3 months.
3 months.
Okay.
Then that process will start.
So what kind of conversation can I begin to have with you when I realize that in the coming months I may not be able to pay?
So you go to the bank, you talk to your banker, you give him the reasons why maybe the next 3 months or whatever I will not be able to pay. And so they put a hold to it. It will not run.
And you continue living in a house?
You continue living in a house. See, once you've told your bankers that I'm having this kind of problems, so I will not be able to pay for the next 3, 4, 5 months. Yes, they understand. We are all human beings. So they will allow you, and no repossession.
And after 3 months, if you still cannot pay?
You go back. But your reasons have to be very, very...
have you tolerated somebody for that long? Coming back and explaining and telling you why they cannot pay?
Strangely, we've been tolerating people for years.
Really?
Yes, for years. You know, Ghana, repossession takes a longer time. Takes a longer time. It's not like the developed countries where after 90 days, bam, it's done. It takes a longer process. At times even it goes through the court system. So it takes a longer time. It just doesn't happen. So before it happens, then you've gone through so many processes. First, you'll be sent a warning letter, about the third letter, you know, go through so many things. So anytime you're having problems, difficulties, you need to see the bank, your bankers, and then talk about it. Now, beyond that, I mean, you take insurance for certain things. Okay, so in countries where insurance, you can take insurance against unemployment. When you get unemployed for a certain number of hours, still they'll allow you to live in.
That does not exist here.
It doesn't exist here, you know. So, but if you are ill, you know, seriously ill, you have part of the insurance, you have a mortgage protection that protects you against certain types of illness. Okay. So during that period...
That exists in Ghana today?
It exists in Ghana.
Okay.
I mean, if you get into a situation where you just cannot work, insurance will have to pay for you until such a time that you're able to work, if you have a mortgage protection.
Okay.
You know, so there are this kind of insurance policies that are built in depending on the situation, and they are all required by law that anyone who takes a mortgage must have a mortgage protection, and then an allied protection for anything that happens to the property. You know, so those things are inbuilt.
So, Mr. Kwachi, give us your top tips as an individual looking at how to finance the property that I either want to own or I want to build.
Okay.
What should I be looking at?
All right. First and foremost, what I'll say is that you ask a question about why do people lose their money, and I think it's going to dovetail into one of the first things that I'm going to say. Don't take a dollar denominated mortgage if your inflows are not dollar denominated.
Never ever.
Don't.
Okay.
Because why? Ghana cedi as I know it in the over 25 years that I've been in banking, it's a whipsaw currency. When we say it's a whipsaw currency, it will always experience some form of depreciation in one way or the other. And as the cedi depreciates, and you might need more cedis to be paying for a dollar that you have contracted. So my first advice is don't take a dollar denominated facility if your inflows or your earnings are not in dollars. That's one of the biggest things that do happen to people. The rates on it might be, oh, it's a dollar, it's a 12%, so let me just jump it. Oh, cedi is about 20%, so I think 12 and 20, I'll go for that. But people don't think through it that Ghana cedi will depreciate. The second thing is sit down and do the math. Get an advisor and know how much you can afford to be setting aside to be paying that mortgage. Like he said, in some jurisdiction, they will allow you to do up to about 40% of your income, provided it's a two-family income. They will allow husband and wife combined. They will allow 40% of the income to be used to be paying for the mortgage. And when I talk about mortgage, it should not necessarily be a completed house. You can take a mortgage just to buy the land. As a first step, you finish paying it. So break it into phases where it is practicable. And you don't need a 5-bedroom house when you don't have a large family. You might need to start maybe from a 2-bedroom house or a convertible, something that can be expanded It's a 2-bedroom, but you can expand it as time allows you, opportunity comes. So my top tips are avoid dollar denomination, and secondly, sit down and do the math. And then the third one is don't use all your income to be paying for the mortgage. There's life beyond paying for the mortgage. So you must know the costs or how much you can afford to do away with. That's what I'm saying.
Can you do regular savings to eventually buy a house?
Sure. I mean, and that's an advice everybody should take. If you want to own a property or you want to take a mortgage, most of the time there's a down payment you have to make. It is important that you save towards.
So the 100,000 example you gave, how much down payments would you make?
5 to 20.
Yeah. I mean, from 0 to 20, depending on the kind of product. There are certain products, no down payment will be required. But most of the time, at least up to 20%. So you must have saved up to 20,000, make a down payment, then you move into the house. Now, the advantage of really mortgage is that you really, the headaches of land issues and all those, you transfer it to the bank. So before you get your mortgage, all those issues are taken care of.
Okay.
You know, you don't have to have any hassles with your land because it's been taken care of. That's why they're able to write a mortgage on that. Okay, so that is very important. I agree with him most of the things, all the things he has said, and also that people should shop. Make sure that what you earn and what you want synchronize. In other words, you should be able to afford what you want to live in. If you are not able to do that, it's going to be very tough for you. So try and make sure that the amount of money you make is sufficient for you to be able to own a house.
Okay.
And as I said, it's not everybody who has to have a mortgage. There are some people who will always rent. There are some people who don't need a mortgage because they can afford to buy a house. But for majority of us, we will need a mortgage.
Okay. So 2 questions. If you lose your job and you cannot continue to pay, it's different from the 3 months, the earlier example of you can't pay at some points.
Well, if you
lose your job
if you
completely,
lose your
what
job,
happens?
normally we'll give you a certain, at Republic Bank, we'll give you a certain number of months to look for a job.
How long is that?
Well, 3-6 months.
But that's, I mean, in today's Ghana, it takes a long time for people
But
to
the other thing you could do also is that if you think that you cannot find a job, sell that house.
You haven't finished paying, can you?
If you put it on the market, there's an appreciation on that house. So you sell it, you pay off the bank, there's a difference. The difference is yours.
Is that smart business?
Yeah, depending, because I always say that, you see, in environments that I have had privilege to associate with, people lose their jobs. And when you lose your job, you can go to your bankers and let them know. So they give you what we call some grace period to be able to find a job so that you can come back and continue paying it. But where it's taking a long time, the best thing is don't lose the property, sell it. You can always restart somewhere.
Okay.
So it's not like when you've sold it, that's the end of your life.
Okay.
I have people who have told me that when they were growing up, they wanted to have houses in certain places they couldn't afford, but now they can easily afford. So that should just tell you that circumstances are not static, or conditions are not static. Your condition or your service conditions might change, and you can afford certain things.
Okay.
And as I always say, to live life comfortably, you might be living in maybe one house, and you might have to get maybe another house, which will be bringing you income to be financing your lifestyle. So it's not just like you've owned one house, that's the end of it. If it is possible to have more than one, why not?
Okay. All right.
And you can do those things by, at some point in time, maybe take the equity value in your house, which I know some banks do here, like your house is worth maybe 200,000 today. In 5 years' time, the same house in the same location, since I've changed, is worth, let's say, 300,000. The 100,000, you could maybe ask a bank to give you some money against that 100,000 equity, with a view that when you sell off the house, you'll be able to afford to pay them, so that you can use that also to start maybe second property or something. It doesn't happen in this country because of maybe normally. That's what I'm saying.
It does.
A few people might be
but
that
that product is available in all the banks.
But you don't tell us as much, because I am hearing it for the first time.
The first time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All is this part of the education.
So at least
Definitely.
you've confirmed what I'm saying.
Republic Bank is there. I mean, all the others.
Republic Bank will have to pay me for this.
We'll talk after that.
But what if there's separation? Because you talked about joints.
That's it.
If I get separated from my husband, but we're all...
Which I tell people that it does happen in life. All you just have to do is to sell the property, or where one person can afford to buy out the other person. I mean, the value, it should be transparent. I mean, in some instances, some people may have some maybe difficulty living in that same house. So I think because maybe it brings back memories and other things, the best bet is maybe sell off the property. You both get your equity value. You start from somewhere else. Or where one person can afford to buy out the other person. I always tell people that it's only in certain instances that divorce becomes bitter, but in most cases, it should be agreeable. You're no longer compatible. You don't see eye to eye with. It doesn't mean that you have become enemies. More especially when there are children even involved, and you have to do maybe co-parenting. You have to be talking to each other about certain things regarding the children. So you might maybe sell it off, or one person buys off the other person in that regard.
I think that as a country, you know, as we always say, that housing itself is a game changer. For countries where they have placed emphasis in housing finance, we realize that the GDP of that country, housing and mortgages per se, makes a huge chunk of it. And therefore, we should be involved as a country to promote housing in this country, because housing really revolves. Any house you build, one house you build, you end up employing more than 20 people. Okay? And after that house is built, still there's more work, because then you buy furniture, you buy TV, you buy all those things. So on one house, see that there's employment generation. So it is important that we pay attention to that. Anyone who wants to buy a house, yes, make sure the land there's no encumbrances on the land. Shop around, talk to developers or anybody who is selling a house. As my colleague said, do not take a dollar-denominated loan if your income is in cedis.
Okay.
It will not work. You will fail.
Okay. Mr. Frankwachi, where can people find you?
They can find me in Tesano, Dauphin Finance, and I think we do advise people. One of our products is advisory, which of course we don't charge for it, because we believe that once we establish the relationship through advisory... Even
if they have no business with you, they can just walk in and
you can just walk in, because my team are there. What we just want people to know that there are, what I say, a few good men around to advise people on what to do with their finances. So our doors are open, Dauphin Finance. We are 2 houses away from the Tesano Baptist Church. Anybody at all can walk in. You don't need to have a formal appointment, but if you want to have a formal appointment, you can always come in and you have people there to talk to you regarding your finances.
All right.
Well, you can find me in Republic Bank.
Yeah, we know how to find you. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and for your thoughts and the insight that you share with us. This conversation is part of a series, with this year's Habitat Fair, the 2018 edition of the JoyNews Western World Properties Habitat Fair, which is in collaboration with MNC Properties. The first clinic done. If you didn't pass through, well, don't worry, we'll give you a second opportunity at the West Hills Mall, 18th and 19th August 2018, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Make sure you come by. You heard the advice, shop around. And the only way you get to do this, we have made it even a lot more easier. We're bringing all the people who deal in either financing, real estate developers, the furnishing side as well. We're just assembling them at the West Hills Mall. All you need to do is to just come by with the family and talk to them. Talk to them. They're great deals as well. So see you at the West Hills Mall, 18th and 19th of August from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the second clinic. And we're counting down to the bigger fair, the Habitat Fair 2018. So I'll see you soon, but we also want to say thank you to the Labadi Beach Hotel. They made it possible for us to bring you this conversation. See you soon, and the next time we meet, it should be at the West Hills Mall.
Aquaba is the feeling of joy when you know you are home, where you sleep in luxury and comfort, and wake up to the breeze of the Atlantic Ocean. Aquaba to Labadi Beach Hotel, where the food is fresh and the smiles are genuine. Now you know you are home. Ghana's finest 5-star hotel, Labadi Beach Hotel. The legacy lives on.